Hari Om and welcome, and let's continue on Prana and Pranayama studies from the book of the Bihar school. So let's talk about Pranayama for transformation this time, and as usually I will read some paragraphs and we'll talk about this. In the practice of Pranayama, Prana unites with Apana, and the united Prana Apana is directed upwards to the head. And when we talk about Apana, all different Udana, Samana, Pranas, we mentioned we have this Prana around the chest and Apana that goes down through the legs, and they united, reversed basically, and moving upwards. We said before many times all the practices of yoga directed to that. That's why we do a lot of inversions and a lot of meditation about bringing energy up through. At this time, Prana leaves the passages of Ida and Pingala and travels through the channel of Sushumna. Ida, Pingala, and Sushumna, there's aspects we will talk about later. It's the main channels, or nadi, we call them nadi, channels of the prana within your pranic body. And Ida, Pingala, they're both going through your spinal column from the eyebrow center till the bottom. They're kind of rising up spirally, one, and the second one, they intervene on the way. And in between, through the spinal column, where actually our spine, we have the big Sushumna, the main nadi channel, the one through which, when we finish our practice and we balanced ourselves fully, Kundalini, or the main energy, will rise up through till the crown. So when we practice pranayama, we constantly have this kind of mini version of your Kundalini rising. We united Ida, Pingala, these two different channels, by balancing out, bringing the middle one into the action. When prana passage through Sushumna, through this main one, the light of jnana is kindled, light up, and the kundalini is awakened. That's what I say. The mind enters a saltless region. And that's one of the indications that you're in a good way in your meditation or practice, when you have this sensation of suspension from the thought. Yeah, it's not, some people describe it as very negatively, like they feel empty and sad and lonely. In a correct practice with good preparation and a good cleansing before, you shouldn't experience this in a sad way. It should be this emptiness and suspension in a very positive and happy way, as I can describe. All the karmic seeds of the yogi are burnt away. The karmic seeds of the yogi are burnt away, and that's what many people say when you start practicing yoga. You can, even in this life, in this presence, in this body, kind of burned out your karma. So it's not very correct way to describe it. It's very simplified, modern description of how the karma works, or how we have all our tendencies and imbalances, and through the yoga we even them out and leave them, let them go, become beyond them. So when you start practice yoga, it increases this, speeded up this process to kind of burned away. The ablation of the senses is offered into the fire of prana. As the practitioner undergoes this process, the sleeping centers of the brain are awakened. And that's what we said in the beginning, and I'm going to repeat many times throughout these lectures. Some people say like we don't use our brain fully. Some people say we're using brain only like 10% or so. It's very speculative, and we cannot say directly what is true and what is not. But through the yoga science, we definitely know that we not like don't use the brain. We use it, but we're not aware of that, and so we consciously do not use the brain. So all the abilities there in the brain and how you perceive everything is all there, but just we don't consciously doing this step in it. And some people live their life throughout without kind of activating all the brain. And by activating our chakras in pranic body within the pranic body, we're activating brain. And vice versa, as I say, always through the brain and activating through the parts of the brain, you're going to activate everything else in your body. And it's not just the chakras channels, you can control this. You start also having Siddhi. Siddhi, it's like some kind of extra abilities for normal people, consider it. Like walking in the water, or I don't know, lift the objects, kind of like a Jedi Siddhi. But it's not as that. There's a different things which some people think it's extra abilities for them, but for the conscious person, it's like a normal. For example, understand energy of the person who you talk to, or feel, kind of read the mind, not directly read the mind. So you're not going to hear the voices in your mind, but you will understand the underlying reasons. see through to the truth. For example, you heard some information, and this information trying to access to one of the emotions you want to feel. For example, somebody saying something happening somewhere around the world, and they want you to feel fear for a particular reason. So, and at the same time, if you have the siddhi of seeing through into the truth, you will understand what's underlying beneath it. It's kind of just roughly describing this. Let's continue. Usually the brain and the mind are trained through the perceptions available and intelligence to the senses. Yoga, however, has a completely different view of mind control. It says isolate the mind and consciousness from the pathways of sensory stimulation. The brain, mind, and consciousness can function independent of the senses. By isolating the brain and mind, the consciousness enters a more powerful state of understanding and realization, and this is the beginning of yoga. You probably understand what it says here, or if not, just listen to it again. It says that traditionally we think that we have a brain in our mind, in our head, and the brain is responsible for our functioning, all the life mechanism in the body. It's the brain control our senses and emotions. Yeah, that's what traditionally we have. And when you go to, probably, I'm not so much into the psychology and psychotherapy, so I'm not very much understand the difference between one another. I do know that they use a lot of, these days they use a lot of yogic ancient practices. They're trying to utilize it, but they're trying to kind of look at them from their own perspective, so a little bit limited. So the idea is that whatever you're thinking, it will be materialized in your world, or physically, or through your body, or so they have this outer trainings. For many, many years, people practices this when they trying to kind of reprogram the brain, the thought process, to improve the life through that. In the yoga, as they say here in this paragraph, we consider the brain, we use it a little bit differently. So brain, mind, and consciousness can function independent of the senses. So we consider we have senses which are very important for us. For example, you get scared, you saw something, so through the eyes, through the senses, you get scared, you feel this adrenaline, the butterflies in the stomach, sometimes down below, you feel this like a vibrational energy. This is your chakras responding. The chemistry in the body responded is the adrenaline, coming into the bloodstream, and the muscles get tighter, you're ready to run. Often they say this fight and flight. They have this response when our shortening of our hip flexor or the psoas muscle will cause us to run faster, yeah? And sometimes when people have unusual situation, when they're really scared about something, or for example, I have a child and something happened around my child, I will have this siddhi, extra abilities, I'll have extra strength, I can push something stronger to protect my child. It's very well-known phenomena. There's nothing voodoo or unrealistic about this. See the people in a situation, they're much faster, they're much stronger than they used to be in a normal calm state. Why? Because of that. But at the same time, in yoga, we're not saying that senses are wrong, which shouldn't have them. Opposite, it says experience your senses, but in the same time, the consciousness above and separated from that. And that's only when you are not driven only from the senses in the brain, when your brain intelligence is disintegrate from your senses and your physical presence in this world, which is temporary, you will tap or get into this higher state of your consciousness and see into the base of underlying existence. You will see the truth as it is, not through this blanket of our emotions governed by our senses and responses. Because all the response you have through the senses, fear, anger, all these kind of type of things, or even love, it's all something that's been programmed into us through our being. We saw this correct response when we were kids, and we start responding like that. Or we experience something, for example, I see the dog and I've been bitten, so I haven't, but for example, I've been bitten by the dog, and I have this response when I totally get scared of it. And for the long time, every time I see the dog, I will have this emotion and response coming. But when I consciously do this, I'll see the dog and it will not trigger those responses to me. Maybe it will, but I will know it's not the truth. And through yoga practice, I will get rid of it with my impression. Through particular yoga nidra will help me with that, for example. Isolate the brain and mind, and consciousness enters a more powerful state of understanding and realization. And it might sound very weird and unrealistic, but people who do practice yoga on a serious level, on a true level, they do have that. And it might come to you quite fast. You don't have to practice all your life and go to a sophisticated guru somewhere down, somewhere up in the mountains. You might just find some local yoga community or something, find some diligent yoga practitioner who had initiation from particular gurus, and you might start experiencing those things already. The practice of pranayama has a direct effect on the functioning of the intricate, sophisticated functions of the brain. Okay, so pranayama, as we say, it's this very, very amazing tool we have in yoga practice. And majority are yoga practice around and about the pranayama. Even the asanas or meditations is always something with the breath. When the yogis investigate the possibility of an independent method to develop the silent area of the mind and the brain in order to transcend the limiting barriers of the human personality, they discovered pranayama. It is possible to understand this process through modern scientific principles as well. Well, there's a described example how it works on brain cellular level, and I will read it for you so you just have this understanding and kind of things that prove you that what yoga is saying, it's not just a spiritual, modern, hippie kind of type of conversations that we have just because it sounds nice and magical and we're trying to escape it, there. Practice yoga, meditating, I feel love, this kind of stuff which doesn't have anything to do with reality. I will read you this science, modern science, directly saying exactly the same things, but maybe for some reason, maybe scientists these days already confirming that it's all correlate with yoga, but some people still kind of fighting and trying to resist it. I don't know why. But in the same time, that's how the modern community built. But at the same time, I know that from already 60s, 70s, and scientists and researchers and yogis were working together and not contradict each other, but only help to each other. So it's just about how modern world structure and probably the world corporations want you to behave for their benefit rather than for your benefit. So, because if everybody practice pranayama, yoga, everybody will live present and in peace, there'll be less disease, there'll be less pills produced, and you can imagine there'll be less money and so on. So let's read it. There are billions of cells in the brain which exist in chaotic order, without any discipline or unity shown as a random brainwave activity when measured on a EEG machine, so it's some electronic scanner machine. These cells are oscillating forms of energy or shakti, comprising the totality of brainwave activity. The house in the brain and mind is also a result of the millions of archetypes that exist as unorganized geometric patterns and influence one's action, thought, decisions, feelings, and awareness as a whole. When the basic elements of the brain move in such a chaotic fashion, so does the thinking process. Pranayama holds the key to blend them together as one pulsating unit. There's not much could be said about that. And I see it straight away on a practical level when people do very short, simple, just watching your breath count, inhale on 3, exhale on 3, pranayama, they're straight away amazed how organized they feel within the mind and the brain. Just try, you will see. One cannot discipline or organize the physical brain or bring order into the chaotic elements of the brain without first balancing the nadis. The nadis, the channels of the prana. So the prana around the body is like this, some people describe it as shiny particles. You can see them different way, like an aura or light or cloud or stream of light, anything. This is how you feel you better to see it. And I'm not going to impose on you any particular way I see it or I know how it should look like. There's no such a thing in yoga exists like it should be. Everybody have the personal perspective of it and it will come to you in a particular way. But through the years, through the thousands of years, how we even see it on ancient sculptures, which 6,000 years old or so, we can see that it's more or less similar. It's presented in a similar way. So there's a one thread line that united all of that experiences, but they always will vary. And also we can, when we experience something somebody come into the room and there'll be 10 people and everybody will feel and describe it differently afterwards, how the way the memory will be projected. So be aware of these things too, especially when you go to some yoga gurus, teachers, whatever, practitioners, and you ask some question, they tell you one, then they go to other one and they explain it differently. It's not because one knows more than other or he's not good enough or something like that. It's because they have different perspective, and through the prism of their understanding and their evolution and spiritual, passage, they experience this that way. And even me, I can explain something in one way, and then months later I'll be describing it differently. So it's all variety. So don't be like very rigid in this. The brain is controlled by the chakras and nadis. It's kind of like a strong statement, but in the same time, it's directly chakra and nadis determine the brain, I would say, maybe better than control. Mental balance is not possible unless one is able to balance the Ida and Pingala nadis through yogic practice. And one of the best, these two nadis, and we'll talk about this more detail about these nadis. One of the best practice for them is Nadi Shodhana, when we breathe in through one nostril, exhale through other, and then back again. And you can you feel how they're balancing out just by breathing several rounds already. The practices of pranayama are of major importance because they purify and balance the flows of Ida and Pingala nadis to awaken Sushumna nadi and Kundalini. And that's what I said from the very beginning. That's the brain cells are stimulated and the brain waves streamlined and the archetypes are organized. In this way, new languages can be learned, behavior can be transformed, a culture can be reconstituted, and a civilization can be given a new turn, although together. You see, it's not just affecting your brains and your behavior, your mood, like how you feel right now. That's why many people treat yoga as some kind of, oh, I'm going there, like you go to sauna and feel a little bit better, relieve the muscles, feel clearer in my mind. It's changing without you even knowing in your life and your further passage of your life. So when you're in your evolution through a spiritual life, start practicing yoga, and instead of going that way and that way, you totally have new possibilities and new passages, and it will slowly every time evolve into the higher states. In the same time, it will definitely change the people around you, even who doesn't even know that you're practicing pranayama or yoga. And believe me, it does happen, and I can see it with my surrounding. According to science, the gray matter of the brain changes during the natural course of human evolution. This process is hastened through the practice of pranayama, and one is able to evolve beyond the natural evolutionary cycle. The benefits of such an event are too numerous to describe, but can be realized only by self-investigation into yoga. And that's what I say in the very beginning of this paragraph. We're fast-forwarding our evolution in the spiritual personal, so you can, like a Buddha, make enlightenment in one life, or like a Jesus, for example, he went for 40 days to the desert. He was doing his deep meditation and fasting for particular this reason. That's what he was doing. I'm not sure he wanted to have a Kundalini rising, but he definitely was evolving spiritually straight away. And he did in these 40 days. And if you ever read the Bible, step back and look at this from yogic perspective, you will see that it described everything that every yogi who does practices of yoga experiences. And therefore, so instead of taking life by life, thousands of years to evolve our end brain physically and change one pattern very slowly, resistantly through your life, you can do it fast forward with using pranayama and meditations as well. And majority meditations are involved in the pranayama, you're watching your breath. You don't have to go very sophisticated, like there's a Kriya Yoga, which is amazing, and it will awaken your Kundalini couldn't do within the days. If you do it correctly with a particular guru and you're prepared, cleans the body, and you're ready for it. However, you don't have to go this way. You can choose something quite simple. For example, Nadi Shodhana and Japa Japa. But if you dig into the same spot every day regularly, you might hit your Kundalini. And it might come to you not just through the practice, it might come to you any other time outside of the practice. And for me, it works, well, I do experience through the practice usually, but often it hits when I'm not in my practice, So be aware.